out checking for smoke. Nothing. No haze. No heat. Just an empty room that smelled faintly of coffee and Monica's lavender soap. Officer Reynolds moved past them. "Millbrook Heights Police, is anyone home?" Silence. Then faint and desperate a voice from upstairs. "Help up here." Leora moved first. Instinct. Training. She was up the stairs before Hayes could stop her boots heavy on the wood medical bag swinging. The hallway on the second floor was dim. The bedroom door at the end stood halfway open. She pushed it the rest of the way and stopped. Monica was on the bed, naked from the waist up, skin flushed and damp. She still wore underwear, but that was all. Her hair was tangled, arms stretched awkwardly above her head. Desmond was on top of her, completely naked. Pressed against her chest, to chest legs tangled. His hands were pinned to the sheets on either side of her head. Her hands were trapped between their bodies. They weren't moving. Not the way people move when they're caught. They were stuck, literally. Glued in place, skin to skin, limbs twisted together like they'd been frozen mid-motion. And on the nightstand, tipped on its side, was a clear plastic bottle, open, nearly empty. Leora's eyes flicked to it, then back to the bed. Desmond's head turned toward the door. His eyes went wide. Don't come in." But Leora was already in. Her voice came out small, broken. "Mom." Monica's head jerked toward her. For a second, her face went blank. Then it crumpled. Leora. She tried to move to cover herself, but her body wouldn't budge. "Oh, God, Leora, Desmond." Leora's voice cracked. He didn't answer. He turned his face away, jaw clenched, breathing hard. Captain Hayes appeared behind Leora. He took one look and put a hand on her shoulder. "Lawson, step back. I've got this." Leora didn't move. "Lawson." She took one step back, then another. Her hands were shaking. "That's my mother," she whispered. "And my husband." Hayes stepped past her into the room, his face carefully neutral. He crouched near the bed, eyeing the sheets the way their skin pulled taut whenever they tried to shift. One of the firefighters came in, took a look, and whistled low. Hayes picked up the bottle from the nightstand, squinted at it, sniffed. His face went flat. "This isn't gel," he said quietly. "It's adhesive." Monica made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "What? You used this before you got into bed?" Desmond tried to shift his weight. His skin tugged against Monica's chest. He hissed through his teeth. "Yes. He stopped. Couldn't finish. Hayes set the bottle down. Industrial adhesive. They coated themselves before they ever touched the sheets. From downstairs came the sound of voices. Neighbors pressing closer. Officer Reynolds was trying to keep them out, but Mrs. Anderson's voice cut through. "Let me see, I live across the street, I have a right." She must have pushed past Reynolds. A second later, her voice rang out from the hallway, high and scandalized. "Oh my Lord, it's Monica. And that young man." Leora flinched like she'd been slapped. Reynolds was on the radio now. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Non-emergency at 47 Maple Street. 2 adults trapped by adhesive, domestic in nature. Requesting additional units." Downstairs the murmurs grew louder. "Monica Lawson. With who? Isn't that her son-in-law?" Hayes turned to the firefighters. "We need acetone mineral spirits, something strong, and towels. Lots of them." One firefighter nodded and jogged downstairs. Hayes looked at Leora. She was still standing in the doorway, pale as paper. Another EMT appeared beside her. Rachel, dark hair pulled back. She put an arm around Leora's shoulders. "Hey," Rachel said softly. "You don't have to stay. I can take over." Leora shook her head. Her voice came out flat, hard. "No, I'm staying. I'm going to finish this." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. On the bed, Monica was crying now. Quiet, wrenching sobs. "Leora, please, I can explain." Don't. Leora's voice cut like glass. Just don't. Desmond still hadn't said a word. His face was turned to the wall, shoulders shaking. That's when I walked in. The crowd on the lawn parted. George Hartley blinked. Trevor, I thought you were out of town. I didn't answer. I kept walking, up the porch steps, through the door, past Officer Reynolds, who let me go when I met her eyes. I climbed the stairs slowly. My legs felt like lead. At the top, I saw her, Leora, standing in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. She turned when she heard my footsteps. For a long moment, we just stared. Then her voice broke. Dad, you knew. I nodded. Tried to speak. Couldn't. Tried again. I'm sorry. My voice came out rough. I'm sorry you had to see this. But I needed you to know. Her face twisted. Fresh tears spilled. How long? Long enough. She looked at me like I was someone she'd never met. Then she stepped forward and collapsed against my chest. I caught her, held her, felt her shake with sobs she'd been holding back. Behind us, I could hear Hayes directing the firefighters, the hiss of a solvent bottle, Monica's pleading, Desmond's silence, and below the whispers of the neighbors spreading the story through Millbrook Heights like wildfire. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was my daughter breaking apart in my arms and the knowledge that I'd been the one to do this to her, even if it was the only way to save her. Before I tell you what happened during that rescue, drop a number to show you're still watching. Comment 1 if you're Team Trevor, I did what I had to do. Comment 2 if you think I crossed the line. I want to see those numbers roll in. Quick note, what follows contains fictional elements for storytelling purposes. If you'd rather not continue, now's your chance to exit. I stood in the hallway with Leora still pressed against me, her shoulders shaking. Behind us, through the open bedroom door, I could see Captain Hayes crouched beside the bed, a bottle of acetone in one hand, a towel in the other. All right, he said, his voice calm and businesslike. This is going to take a while. I need both of you to stay completely still. Any movement makes it worse, Monica whimpered. Desmond said nothing. Hayes looked at the nightstand, at the overturned bottle. You applied this before you got into bed. Desmond didn't answer. Monica's voice came out small. Yes, Hayes exhaled slowly. That means the adhesive is coating your skin directly, not just stuck to the sheets. This is going to be harder than I thought. Leora pulled back from me, wiping her eyes. Her face was red and blotchy, but her jaw was set. She turned toward the bedroom and I followed. We didn't go in, we just stood there watching. One of the firefighters poured acetone onto a towel and handed it to Hayes, who pressed it carefully against Monica's shoulder, where her skin was stuck to Desmond's chest. This is going to sting, Hayes warned. Monica hissed through her teeth as the solvent soaked in. The chemical smell filled the room, sharp and medicinal. Hayes held the towel in place, counting under his breath. 2 minutes. 3. Then he peeled it back and gently tested the bond. The skin moved slightly, pulling away from Desmond's with a soft, tearing sound that made my stomach turn. Good, Hayes muttered. Progress. He moved to the next spot. Monica's forearm bonded to Desmond's ribs. Another towel. Another 3-minute wait. Another careful separation. Then her wrist stuck to the sheet beneath her. Her hip pressed against his thigh. Each bond required the same slow, painful process. Hayes worked methodically, moving from one adhesive point to the next. Chest, abdomen, thighs. The areas where they'd applied the gel, the fake gel, before climbing into bed. Monica was crying again. Quiet, broken sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Nobody answered her. Leora stood beside me, arms crossed, face expressionless. She looked carved from ice. 25 minutes. That's how long it took. 25 minutes of acetone and towels and careful, painful separations. By the time Hayes finally pulled them apart, Monica's chest and arms were red and raw, covered in angry welts where the adhesive had torn at her skin. Desmond's torso looked the same red marks across his ribs, his stomach, his thighs. One of the firefighters handed them blankets. Desmond wrapped his around his waist, immediately face burning. Monica clutched hers to her chest, still crying. Hayes stood and wiped his hands. "You'll both need medical evaluation. Those are second-degree chemical burns. Minimal, but you'll need ointment and monitoring." Officer Reynolds stepped into the room. She looked at me. "Mr. Lawson, can you explain what happened here?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone. "Listen to this." I pulled up the recording Vincent had sent me. Hit play. Monica's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. "If Trevor passes, I inherit everything. The company, the house, the life insurance policy, $2 million. Then Desmond's voice, calm and cold. "We can't wait forever, Monica. He's 63 and healthy as an ox. We need to speed this up." Reynolds' posture stiffened. The recording played on. The part about the accident, the scaffolding, the equipment malfunction. When it finished, Reynolds looked at Monica and Desmond. "This is evidence of conspiracy. I'm going to need both of you to come down to the station for questioning." Monica's head snapped up. "Trevor, please. It was just talk. We never meant. You talked about removing me so you could take my company, my money, my life." I said, my voice flat and cold. "And you did it in my bed." She flinched like I'd hit her. Reynolds pulled out handcuffs. "Mr. Clark, get dressed." Desmond pulled on pants under the blanket, awkward and humiliated. When he stood, Reynolds cuffed his wrists. "Mrs. Lawson, you too." Monica took the dress one of the firefighters handed her and disappeared into the bathroom to change. That's when Leora moved. She crossed the room in 3 strides and stopped directly in front of Desmond. He looked up, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. "I trusted you," Leora said quietly. "I loved you, and you did this with my mother. In my father's bed." Desmond opened his mouth, closed it. "Leora, I'm sorry." She hit him. Not hard, just a sharp slap across the face that echoed in the silent room. Reynolds didn't move to stop her. "We're done," Leora said, her voice like steel. "Don't ever contact me again." She turned to Monica, who had just emerged from the bathroom pale and trembling. "Leora." Monica started stepping forward. "Please, I'm still your mother." "No." Leora shook her head, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know who you are anymore." Monica reached for her. "Leora, you're a stranger," Leora said, and her voice finally broke. "That's all you are now." Monica crumpled, sobbing, into her hands. Reynolds took her by the arm. "Let's go." They led them downstairs. I followed at a distance, Leora at my side. The neighbors were still gathered on the lawn, but they'd gone quiet. They parted to let the officers through, watching in silence as Monica and Desmond were guided into the back of the patrol car. Nobody said a word. Vincent appeared at my elbow and handed a thick folder to Officer Reynolds. "Everything's in here. Photos, audio recordings, financial documents, surveillance footage. All time-stamped." Reynolds took it and nodded. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Lawson." "I won't go anywhere." The patrol car's lights came on silent this time. Just the slow, deliberate pull away from the curb. The crowd watched it go. Then one by one they drifted back to their houses. Within 5 minutes the street was empty. I stood on the porch, Leora beside me, watching the patrol car disappear around the corner. She leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder. "How long have you known?" I wrapped an arm around her. "Long enough to protect you, and to make sure they couldn't hurt us anymore." She was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "Thank you." I didn't know what to say, so I just held her. The house behind us felt emptier than it ever had, but Leora was still here, still standing. still strong. And for now, that was enough. 6 hours had passed since the police car pulled away from my house. 6 hours and I still felt numb. Leora and I sat in the waiting room at Millbrook Heights Memorial, surrounded by the sterile smell of antiseptic and the low hum of fluorescent lights. The plastic chairs were uncomfortable, but neither of us had moved in the past hour. We'd driven here in silence, followed the ambulance that carried Monica and Desmond, watched them get wheeled in through the emergency entrance on separate gurneys, blankets pulled up to their chins, faces turned away from each other. Now we waited. Leora sat with her arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. She'd changed out of her EMT uniform at some point, I didn't remember when, and now wore jeans and a plain gray sweater. Her eyes were red and swollen. I didn't know what to say to her, so I didn't say anything. At 4 o'clock, a doctor in blue scrubs pushed through the double doors. He scanned the room, spotted us, and walked over. Mr. Lawson, I'm Dr. Samuel Reed. I've been overseeing your wife's care. I stood. Leora didn't. How is she? I asked, though I wasn't sure I cared. She and Mr. Clark both have first and second-degree chemical burns on their chest, abdomen, and thighs. The adhesive caused some irritation, but the real damage came from the solvent we used to separate them. Acetone can be harsh on the skin. Will they be all right? Physically, yes. We've applied topical treatments and started them on pain medication. They'll need to stay for observation 24 to 48 hours to make sure there's no allergic reaction or secondary infection. Leora spoke for the first time, her voice flat. Are they in the same room? Dr. Reed shook his head. No. Separate rooms per police request. She nodded and looked away. I cleared my throat. Can I see her, Monica? Dr. Reed hesitated. She's resting. But if you'd like, I can arrange a short visit. I would. He glanced at Leora. Would you like to? No, she said quickly. I'm not going. Dr. Reed nodded and looked back at me. Room 314. Officer Reynolds is stationed outside. I turned to Leora. She was still staring at the wall, her face pale and drawn. You don't have to go, I said quietly, putting a hand on her shoulder. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. I can't. Not yet. That's okay. I left her there and followed Dr. Reed down the hall. Room 314 was at the end door, half closed. Officer Reynolds stood beside it, arms crossed, face impassive. She nodded when she saw me. 10 minutes, she said. Understood. I pushed the door open. Monica was lying in the hospital bed, propped up against a stack of pillows. Her face was pale, her hair limp and tangled. She wore a hospital gown, and one of her wrists was cuffed to the metal bed rail. Standard procedure for suspects in custody. She looked up when I came in, and her eyes filled with tears. Trevor, her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I didn't move closer. I just stood there 2 meters from the bed, my hands in my pockets. Sorry for what, Monica? She blinked, confused. For everything. For what I did, for hurting you. Be specific. My voice came out flat cold. Are you sorry for cheating, for stealing, or for plotting to remove me so you could take everything I've built? She flinched. Trevor, I never wanted to hurt you. It happened. Desmond made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. He made me feel young again. Wanted. You were always working, always building, and I felt invisible. I shook my head slowly. I worked to build a life for us. For you. For Leora. I built you a home. I gave you everything I had. And you repaid me by stealing from me and planning my death. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. She started crying ugly, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I know. I destroyed everything. But please, Trevor, please don't take Leora from me. She's my daughter. I'm still her mother. You stopped being her mother the moment you slept with her husband. Trevor, she doesn't want to see you, Monica. She's sitting in the waiting room right now, and she refused to come in here. And I don't blame her. Monica's face crumpled. What's going to happen to me? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 38 years. This woman I'd built a life with. This stranger. The police have the recordings, I said quietly. The ones where you and Desmond discussed having me removed. They have the financial documents showing the embezzlement, the forged signatures, the offshore accounts. You're going to be charged with conspiracy and fraud. Maybe more. Trevor, please. You'll lose everything. The house, the company, our life. Everything you tried to steal from me, you're going to lose anyway. She reached for me with her free hand, but I stepped back. I loved you for 38 years, Monica. I built you a home with my own hands. I trusted you with my life. And you sold me out for a younger man and a bank account. I didn't. We're done. I turned and walked to the door. Trevor, wait. I didn't wait. I walked out, pulled the door shut behind me, and didn't look back. Officer Reynolds gave me a nod as I passed. I didn't acknowledge it. I walked back down the hallway past the nurse's station, past the vending machines, until I reached the waiting room. Leora was still in the same chair, staring at the same spot on the wall. I sat down beside her. She didn't look at me, but she spoke. How is she? She's alive. And I leaned back in the chair, suddenly exhausted. The woman I married, she's gone. Leora was quiet for a long time. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. We sat there in silence. Two people who'd lost the people they loved most. In the same house. On the same day. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside the sun was setting. And somewhere down the hall, Monica was crying alone in a hospital room, handcuffed to a bed with no one left who cared. We couldn't go into the master bedroom. The door was closed, a strip of yellow police tape stretched across the frame. Evidence collected. The smell of glue and acetone still hung in the air, seeping out from under the door like a ghost. So Leora and I sat in the living room instead, a pizza box open on the coffee table between us. I'd ordered it on the way home. Pepperoni. Her favorite when she was a kid. Neither of us had eaten much. It was 8 o'clock. The house was too quiet. Outside, the streetlights had come on, casting long shadows through the windows. Leora picked at a slice, pulling off a piece of pepperoni and setting it aside. She hadn't looked at me since we'd sat down. Finally, she spoke. When did you start suspecting? I set down my own slice. The night she came home late, about 3 weeks ago. I found a hotel receipt in her purse. Riverside Inn. $287. Leora looked up. That's it, a receipt. That's where it started. Then I found more. Lingerie that wasn't hers. Charges on our credit card I didn't recognize. Cash withdrawals week after week. I leaned back against the couch. I hired Vincent to follow her. He got photos, and then I saw who she was with. Desmond! Desmond. Her face crumpled and fresh tears spilled over. How long? The affair started over 4 years ago, before he married you. She closed her eyes. Oh, God. I'm sorry, sweetheart. He was with her before we even... Her voice broke. Before we got married. I thought he loved me. He never loved you, I said quietly. He used you to get close to me, to get access to the company, to Monica. She put her face in her hands and sobbed. I moved closer, put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, shaking. I didn't tell you sooner because I needed proof, I said. If I'd told you without evidence, Desmond would have lied. He would have made you doubt me. And I couldn't risk them destroying what I'd gathered. I couldn't risk them hurting you. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I should have seen it. The late nights, the calls he'd take in the other room, the way Mom always defended him when I complained. They were good at lying. That's not your fault. She stared at the pizza box, her jaw tight. What else did you find? So I told her. All of it. The forged signatures, the fake invoices, the offshore account, the stock transfer, the recordings of them planning to have me removed so they could liquidate the company. By the time I finished, her tears had stopped. Her face had gone hard. They were going to end your life, she said flatly. Yes, and take everything. Yes. She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at me. The glue. That was you, wasn't it? I nodded. I wanted them humiliated. I wanted them to feel shame in front of everyone they'd lied to. And I wanted you to see it for yourself, so you'd never doubt your decision to leave him. It was cruel. So was plotting to remove me. So was stealing from my company. So was sleeping with your husband in my bed. She flinched. Then slowly she nodded. You're right. They deserved it. We sat in silence after that. Ate a little more pizza. Didn't talk. At 9 o'clock my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Hello. Mr. Lawson, this is Nurse Beverly from Millbrook Heights Memorial. There's a situation with your wife and Mr. Clark. I sat up straight. What kind of situation? They're both experiencing severe skin irritation and pain. Burning, itching redness spreading across the affected areas. Dr. Reed wants to examine them again. We're not sure if it's an allergic reaction to the treatment or something else. I glanced at Leora. She was watching me, eyes wide. We'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up. What happened? Leora asked. Monica and Desmond. Something's wrong. We drove back to the hospital in silence. By the time we arrived, it was 9:30. Dr. Reed met us in the hallway outside Monica's room, his face grim. What's going on? I asked. Their conditions have worsened significantly. Both of them are experiencing second-degree burns, intense itching, swelling, and blistering on the areas that were already irritated. We've had to rebandage and administer stronger pain medication. How did this happen? He pulled out a small tube. Hydrocortisone cream, standard issue. We applied this earlier to soothe the irritation from the adhesive and the solvent. But when we tested a sample, we found contaminants, capsaicin powder, and what appears to be an industrial-grade itching agent. I kept my face neutral. Contaminants. This wasn't an accident, Mr. Lawson. Someone tampered with the medication. Officer Reynolds appeared at the end of the hall, her expression sharp. She walked over, arms crossed. Mr. Lawson, do you know anything about this? I shook my head. No. I've been home with my daughter since 6 o'clock. You can check with the pizza delivery driver if you need confirmation. She studied me for a long moment. Then she turned to Dr. Reed. Keep the samples. I'll need them for evidence. Through the window of Monica's room, I could see her lying in bed, her arms wrapped in fresh bandages. She was crying again, her face red and blotchy. She looked up and saw me standing there. Our eyes met. I turned away. Down the hall, Desmond's voice rose sharp and angry. I want to call my lawyer, now. Officer Reynolds sighed. You're entitled to a lawyer, Mr. Clark. But you're still under investigation. You're not going anywhere. Leora stood beside me, staring through the window at Monica. She looks like she's in pain. She is. Good. I looked at her surprised. She met my eyes, her face cold. They were going to bury you, Dad. I'm glad they're suffering. We left the hospital at 11. On the drive home, Leora was quiet. Then softly she asked, Did you do it, the powder? I didn't answer right away. I kept my eyes on the road hand, steady on the wheel. Then I said, They wanted to bury me, Leora. I just made sure they'd remember what it feels like to burn. She didn't say anything, but she reached over and squeezed my hand. And that was answer enough. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry hornet. Sunlight sliced through the guest bedroom curtains. I'd spent the night there because the master bedroom still reeked of acetone and regret. I reached for the phone and saw 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and a string of email notifications. The first name I recognized was Warren's. Warren Blackwood. You okay? Call me. I scrolled down. Pamela Norton, my office manager, had written, Boss, we need to talk about next week's schedule. Let me know when you're ready. There was a message from Amy Patterson, a reporter at the Millbrook Gazette, asking for an interview. I deleted it without reading past the first line. A few neighbors, George Hartley Mrs. Anderson, even old Mr. Sinclair from 2 blocks over, had sent brief notes of support. 1 or 2 messages carried a different tone, hinting that I'd crossed a line, that what I'd done was cruel or vindictive. I ignored those. The people who mattered knew the truth. I walked downstairs and found Leora already in the kitchen pouring coffee. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but her jaw was set in the same determined line I'd seen the night before. She handed me a mug without a word, and I took it gratefully. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came after a storm when the wind had died, and the world was waiting to see what remained. I opened the Millbrook Gazette website on my phone and scanned the headline, Affair Scandal Rocks Local Construction Magnate's Family. Wife and son-in-law caught in humiliating trap. The article was careful, citing sources close to the investigation, but the facts were there. By noon, everyone in Millbrook Heights would know the story. By evening, everyone in the county would. I set the phone down and looked at Leora. She was staring into her coffee, steam rising between us. Are you going back to work? I asked. She shook her head. I took a week off. Captain Hayes said I should. Rachel and the rest of the crew, they've been texting all morning. They're worried about me, but they understand. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. We need to fix that bedroom, I said. I can't sleep in the guest room forever. A flicker of a smile crossed her face. I was thinking the same thing. New mattress, fresh paint, maybe some new curtains. Make it yours again. We spent the rest of the morning calling furniture stores and paint suppliers, planning the renovation, like a pair of generals mapping out a campaign. It felt good to have something constructive, to do something that didn't involve lawyers or police reports. Detective Jennifer Blake called just after lunch. I put her on speaker so Leora could hear. Mr. Lawson, I wanted to update you on the charges. Blake said, her voice crisp and professional. Monica Lawson and Desmond Clark have both been formally charged with conspiracy to commit serious harm, embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. Bail has been set at $50,000 each. They're both still in custody pending arraignment on Monday. Good, I said. The word came out harder than I'd intended. Blake paused. There's also the matter of the contaminated ointment. We've received a lab report confirming capsaicin powder and an industrial-grade itching agent were mixed into the hydrocortisone cream. We're investigating, but at this point, we have no evidence linking you or anyone associated with you to the tampering. Both suspects have declined to press charges, likely because they don't want to draw more attention to the circumstances of their discovery. I kept my face neutral. I wasn't involved, Detective. I told you that last night. I believe you, Blake said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Just stay available. We may have follow-up questions. She hung up. Leora looked at me, one eyebrow raised. I shrugged. I didn't touch that cream, I said. It was true. I hadn't. Vincent had handled that part, and Vincent was very good at covering his tracks. I didn't need to say that out loud. Leora seemed to understand. The divorce paperwork arrived by courier in the late afternoon. I'd filed an emergency petition with the county court invoking a prenuptial agreement Monica and I had signed 38 years ago. According to the terms, Monica was entitled to 10% of our personal assets, the house, the cars, the joint savings, but nothing from the company. No stock, no voting rights, no claim to the contracts or the reputation I'd built over 5 decades. My lawyer estimated she'd walk away with maybe $100,000 after debts and legal fees. Considering she'd tried to steal millions, it felt like justice. Leora's divorce was moving even faster. Her lawyer had contacted Desmond's attorney that morning, and Desmond hadn't contested a single term. He'd sent her a text around 3 in the afternoon, a long, rambling apology about mistakes and regrets. Leora showed it to me, then deleted it without replying. "Hi, he doesn't get to apologize," she said. "He lost that right." I agreed. By evening, we were both exhausted. The bedroom renovation would start Monday. The divorce hearings were scheduled for the following week. The criminal trial was months away. For now, all we could do was breathe. I walked out onto the front porch, and Leora followed. The sun was sinking behind the hills to the west, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Leora leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. "What happens now, Dad?" I thought about that. The scandal would fade eventually. The neighbors would find something else to talk about. Monica and Desmond would face trial, serve time, or cut deals and vanish from our lives. The company would survive. The house would be repaired. Life would go on. "We rebuild," I said, "together." She nodded slowly, and for the first time in days, I saw something like peace in her eyes. We stood there in silence, watching the sun go down, and I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 10 days after the world had watched my wife and son-in-law hauled out of my bedroom in handcuffs. I was sitting in the small office I'd set up in the corner of the living room, reviewing a bid for a library renovation, when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, a local area code, but not one I recognized. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. "Trevor Lawson," I said. There was a pause, then a voice I knew too well. "Desmond Clark." "Yeah, I know what you did, Trevor." His tone was low-controlled, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath. The glue, the 911 call, the powder at the hospital. "I don't have proof yet, but I'll find it. And when I do, I'm dragging you down with us." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Part of me wanted to laugh. The other part wanted to reach through the phone and finish what I'd started. "Go ahead and try," I said, my voice cold. "You don't have proof because there isn't any. And even if you did, who's going to believe you? You're the man who was caught in bed with his mother-in-law, plotting to harm his father-in-law. You're finished, Desmond. You just don't know it yet." There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing fast and shallow. Then he hung up. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand, then dialed Detective Blake. She picked up on the second ring. "Lawson," she said. "What can I do for you?" "Desmond Clark just called me, threatened me, said he'd drag me down with him." Blake sighed. "Did he make a specific threat? Say he was going to harm you?" "Not in so many words, but the intent was clear." "I'll make a note of it," she said. "But unless he makes an explicit threat or takes action, there's not much I can do. Just keep your distance and let me know if he contacts you again." I hung up, feeling a knot of frustration in my chest. Desmond was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. But he was also stupid, and stupid people made mistakes. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. An older woman stood on my porch, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a pale blue cardigan. I recognized her immediately. Margaret Hayes, Monica's mother. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Margaret," I said. She looked up at me, her eyes red and tired. "Trevor, thank you for seeing me. I didn't say I'd see you. I said I'd open the door." She flinched, but held her ground. "I flew in from Tampa this morning. I need to talk to you about Monica." I crossed my arms. "There's nothing to talk about. Please," she said, her voice cracking. "I know what she did was terrible, unforgivable, but she's still my daughter, and she's broken, Trevor. Completely broken." I felt a flash of anger. "She broke herself, Margaret. She made her choices, And she tried to break me, too. Margaret nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know. But there's something you need to know. Something she told me. I hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. We sat in the living room. Margaret perched on the edge of the couch, clutching her purse. I sat across from her, arms still crossed. Monica was pregnant, Margaret said quietly. I froze. What? She did in vitro fertilization 3 months ago, at a clinic in Cyprus. She used Desmond's sample. She wanted to have a baby with him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth, closed it, then opened it again. She was going to pass his child off as mine. Margaret nodded, crying openly now. I told her it was wrong. I begged her not to do it. But she said you wouldn't notice. That you were always so busy with work you wouldn't question it. I stood up, turned away, stared out the window. My hands were shaking. She lost the baby 2 weeks ago, Margaret continued. Miscarried. The stress from the scandal. I turned back to her, my voice low and hard. I worked for 38 years to give her a good life, Margaret. I built a company. I built this house. I gave her everything, and she repaid me with lies, theft, and betrayal. I don't care if she's broken. She deserves to be. Margaret stood clutching her purse and walked to the door. She paused, looked back at me. I'm sorry, Trevor. For everything. I didn't answer. She left and I stood alone in the empty room, feeling hollow. The phone rang again that afternoon. Another unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Lawson. A woman's voice, warm and southern. My name is Vanessa Porter. You don't know me, but I know Desmond Clark. I was his first wife. I sat down slowly. His first wife? Yes, sir. We were married 7 years ago. I was 42, a widow with some money my late husband left me. Desmond was 27, charming, told me he was a financial consultant. We married after 6 months. He drained about $150,000 from my accounts, had an affair with my 23-year-old assistant, and divorced me after 18 months. I tried to sue him for fraud, but I didn't have enough proof. I listened, my pulse quickening. I saw the news about what happened to you, Vanessa continued. I recognized him in the photos. I wanted to reach out and offer my testimony. I have bank records, emails, witness statements from that time. If it'll help put him away, I want to do it. I exhaled slowly. Why now? Because I want to see him pay for what he did to me, to you, and to your daughter. Men like Desmond don't stop Mr. Lawson. They just find new victims. It's time someone stopped him. I wrote down her contact information and promised to pass it along to Detective Blake. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. That evening, I told Leora about Vanessa's call. We were sitting on the porch, the air cool and sharp. Leora listened without interrupting, her jaw tightening with every word. He did this before, she said finally, her voice shaking. And I was just... What another mark. I put my arm around her shoulders. You were never a mark, sweetheart. You were cover. A way for him to get close to us. But he's done now. Vanessa's testimony will bury him. Leora nodded, her eyes hard. Good. I want him to rot in prison. I pulled her close, and we sat there in the fading light, 2 people learning to stand again. I woke that morning to silence, the kind that settles over a house before something inevitable happens. 31 days had passed since the night I found the hotel receipt in Monica's purse. Today the legal system would begin to decide what came next. I dressed carefully, a charcoal suit, white shirt, navy tie, and met Leora in the kitchen. She was already ready, wearing a dark blue blazer and slacks, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She looked older than she had a month ago. We both did. Warren picked us up at 8. Vincent met us at the courthouse, a granite building in the center of Millbrook Heights. Reporters were already gathering on the steps. I ignored them and walked inside. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, paneled in dark wood with high ceilings. Warren, Vincent, Leora, and I sat in the gallery behind the prosecution table. Across the aisle, Monica sat beside her attorney, wearing a plain gray dress that hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. She glanced at me once, then looked away. Desmond sat at a separate table with his own lawyer, his expression cold and unreadable. Judge Patricia Holloway entered, a stern woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and graying hair. The bailiff called the room to order, and the preliminary hearing began. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. First, the recordings. Monica's voice filled the room. "How soon can we do it?" Desmond's reply, "Give me 2 weeks. I'll make it look like an accident." I heard Monica sob quietly. Desmond stared straight ahead. Second, the financial documents. Bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals, forged checks, the offshore transfer of $125,000. The fraudulent contract transferring 40% of my company's stock to Monica, signed with a forged version of my signature. Third, the surveillance evidence. Photos and video of Monica and Desmond together. 8 separate occasions over 3 months. Meeting at hotels, kissing in parking lots, holding hands in restaurants. Finally, the testimony of Vanessa Porter via video feed from Florida. "Now Desmond Clark is a predator," she said. "He targeted me when I was vulnerable, a widow with money. He charmed me, married me, drained my accounts, and left me with nothing. When I saw the news about Mr. Lawson, I knew Desmond had done it again." Judge Holloway turned to Monica. "Does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Monica stood gripping the edge of the table. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was weak. I was foolish. I let Desmond manipulate me, but I never wanted Trevor to be harmed." The prosecutor objected. "Your Honor," the defendant asked, "how soon?" when Mr. Clark suggested an accident. "That is consent." Judge Holloway leaned forward. "I find probable cause to bind both defendants over for trial." She announced the charges formally. Monica faced embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud. 5 to 10 years if convicted. Desmond faced embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to cause serious harm. 10 to 15 years. Judge Holloway raised bail to $100,000 each and barred them from leaving the state. Monica broke down. Desmond remained silent. When the judge gavelled the hearing closed, I stood and walked out without looking back. Leora, Warren, and Vincent followed. Outside, the reporters swarmed. Leora stopped on the courthouse steps and turned to face the cameras. She unfolded a piece of paper and read in a clear, steady voice, "My name is Leora Lawson Clark, though soon it will just be Leora Lawson. I stand here today not as a daughter or a wife, but as a woman who was betrayed by the 2 people she trusted most. My mother and my husband chose to destroy my father and my family out of greed and lust. I do not forgive them. I do not pity them. I only hope the law will punish them as they deserve. Thank you." The reporters applauded. Leora folded the paper, turned, and walked down the steps. I placed my hand on her shoulder, pride swelling in my chest. We drove home in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, Leora finally spoke. "Do you think Mom will go to prison?" I turned off the engine and sat for a moment staring at the house I'd built with my own 2 hands. "I don't know," I said. "But whether she does or not, she's already lost everything that mattered. You, me, her reputation, her freedom." Leora nodded slowly. We got out of the car and walked inside together, ready to begin a new chapter. I stood on the front porch on a Saturday morning in late October, watching the leaves fall. 2 months had passed since the preliminary hearing. 90 days since the night I found that hotel receipt. The world had changed. I had changed. But the house still stood solid and quiet the way I'd built it all those years ago. Autumn in Millbrook Heights was always beautiful. Gold and crimson leaves blanketing the yard, the air crisp and clean. I took a slow breath and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Inside, the business of healing had begun. Monica had signed away her claims to Lawson and Sons as part of the divorce settlement. The company was mine again, fully and completely. Within weeks, 2 of my oldest clients awarded us new contracts totaling $1.8 million. Word had spread about what Monica and Desmond had done, and instead of driving customers away, it had brought them closer. People in this town valued loyalty. I'd promoted Warren Blackwood to Chief Operating Officer. We'd talked about the future over coffee one morning, and I'd told him my plan 5 more years then, retirement. If Leora wanted the company, it would be hers. If not, Warren could buy me out. Leora had listened carefully when I'd explained it to her. "I don't know if I want to run a construction company, Dad," she'd said. "But I'll think about it." "No pressure," I'd replied. "I just want you to have choices." She'd smiled then, a real smile, and I'd known we were going to be okay. The master bedroom was unrecognizable now. I'd stripped it down to the studs, replaced everything. The walls were a soft cream instead of the old pale blue. I'd hung new photos. Me and Leora at her college graduation, my parents standing in front of the house the day we finished building it. There were no pictures of Monica. That part of my life was over. Leora had gone back to her EMT shifts full-time. She'd lived with me for 3 months after the hearing, then moved into a small apartment near the hospital. She visited twice a week for dinner. It was enough. Monica's fate had been decided quickly. Her lawyer had negotiated a plea deal: 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution payments of $180,000 over 10 years. The judge had also issued a no-contact order. She'd moved back to Florida to live with her mother. Desmond had refused the plea deal. His trial was scheduled for 6 months from now. His lawyer predicted he'd get 8 to 12 years if convicted. Vanessa Porter had agreed to testify about his pattern of fraud and manipulation. Leora had finalized her divorce 2 weeks ago. She was Leora Lawson again. She'd come home that day with the court papers in her hand and a look of relief on her face. One weekend evening in early November, Leora and I hosted a dinner. We invited Warren, Vincent, Captain Hayes, and a few close friends. I fired up the grill and cooked ribs the way my grandfather had taught me. The house filled with warmth and laughter, the kind I hadn't heard in far too long. After we'd eaten, Warren raised his glass. "To Trevor," he said. "A man who built an empire, survived betrayal, and came out stronger. And to Leora, a woman who faced the worst and didn't break. You two are proof that family isn't just blood. It's loyalty." Everyone clinked glasses. I felt a tightness in my chest ease. The guests left around 10. I walked out onto the porch and pulled my father's pocket watch from my pocket. The old brass was cool and heavy in my hand. I opened it, watched the second hand tick, then looked up at the night sky. Had it been worth it? The revenge, the pain, the destruction I'd caused. I looked through the window into the living room. Leora was standing at the sink, rinsing a dish, talking on the phone and laughing. My daughter. Safe. Free. Whole. Yes, it had been worth it. I thought about Monica then, not with anger, but with a strange, hollow sorrow. I'd loved her for 38 years, but the woman I'd loved had died long before that night I found the receipt. I just hadn't seen it. I stood, slipped the watch back into my pocket, and walked inside. I locked the door behind me and turned off the porch light. Leora was sitting on the couch now, reading a medical textbook, her face calm. I remembered the first time I'd held her 32 years ago, and the promise I'd made to always protect her. I'd kept that promise. Not perfectly, not without cost, but I'd kept it. She looked up and smiled. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, sweetheart," I said. The house settled around us warm and quiet. Outside, the autumn wind rustled through the trees. Inside, the home I'd built with my own hands had become once again a place of safety, and that was enough. So if you've stayed with me this far, here's what I need you to understand. This family story taught me that loyalty isn't given freely. It's earned, tested, and sometimes shattered beyond repair. My dad's revenge wasn't just about anger. It was about protecting what I'd built and refusing to let betrayal define me. But the cost was high. Every step toward justice pulled me further from the man I used to be. Looking back, I see where I went wrong. I waited too long. I trusted too much. I let work consume me while my marriage rotted. God knows I'm not proud of the trap I set. But when you're facing conspiracy theft and a plot to end your life sometimes, dad revenge becomes the only option left. Here's my advice: don't be like me. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't let pride keep you silent when something feels wrong. This family story didn't have to end in courtrooms and broken hearts. If I'd confronted Monica earlier, chosen honesty over secrecy, maybe this family story would have ended differently. Maybe my dad's revenge wouldn't have been necessary at all. Now I want to hear from you. Have you faced betrayal like this? How did you respond? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Quick note: this narrative contains fictionalized elements crafted for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, explore other videos that suit you better. Thank you for walking this road with me. I hope you found something worth remembering.